Grand Admiral Thrawn is one of the few characters not created by Lucas who gained popularity outside the main episodes of Star Wars. The name Thrawn first appeared in the 1991 book Heir to the Empire. Writer Timothy Zahn laid the foundations of the expanded universe and created the Thrawn trilogy, a worthy continuation of the original episodes. Many of Zahn's ideas became the basis for the creation of other Star Wars works and even the prequel trilogy. It was Timothy Zahn who first named the galactic capital Coruscant, a name that George Lucas later used in his future films. After the Thrawn trilogy was declared non-canon, the return of such an interesting villain was only a matter of time. In the third season of the animated series, Rebels, Grand Admiral Thrawn became the main antagonist and took his honorable place in the new canon. Timothy Zahn did not abandon his character and began to develop him within the framework of the new canon. We have already read 2 trilogies entirely dedicated to Thrawn and his enigmatic race, the Chiss. This is what our new video will be about. You will learn the canonical story of Grand Admiral Thrawn up to the events of the series Ahsoka. Enjoy the viewing. The galaxy we know as a galaxy far, far away was divided into several regions. The core of the galaxy was surrounded by the densely populated region of the core worlds. It was there that the galactic capital, the planet Coruscant, was located. Further from the core were the regions of the inner rim and mid-rim colonies. These territories were considered the peaceful and developing part of the galaxy. The largest region, the outer rim, was notorious for its thriving crime. The largest criminal syndicates ruled there, and the authority of the core worlds over the outer rim was merely nominal. The western part of the galaxy, which was not mapped, was called the unknown regions. Hyperspace anomalies, solar storms, black holes, gravity wells, chaos reigned in this part of the galaxy. Throughout history, these regions remained unexplored, shrouded in myths and mysteries. It was unknown what dangers might lurk in this section of the vast galaxy. One such myth was the tales of the mysterious blue-skinned race, the Chiss. Legend said that the Chiss were just and skilled warriors capable of defeating their enemies with minimal casualties. Their incredible intellect and tactical thinking were more frightening than inspiring to the listeners of these tales. In the unknown regions lay the planet Chilla, the homeworld of the Chiss race. Millennia earlier, the Chiss had contact with other civilizations, but after numerous wars, they retreated back to the unknown regions and hid from all galactic events. The political entity consisting of Chilla and other colony planets was called the Chiss Ascendancy. The Ascendancy was led by an oligarchic government made up of ruling families headed by aristocrats. The Chiss were known for their military prowess and noble military doctrine. The Chiss Ascendancy adhered to a policy of isolation and refrained from preemptive strikes. They valued honor and dignity, approaching problem-solving from a position of strength and respect. Most Chiss names were polysyllabic and consisted of 3 parts. The first part indicated the family, the second was the given name, and the third part referenced other social factors. On one of the colony planets named Renthor, a Chiss named Kivurawanuru, or for short, Vuron, was born. He was a member of the small and poor Kivu family. He had an older sister, Kivurik Ardok or Vurika. Vurika had a sensitivity to the Force which was very rare for the Chiss. The Chiss called the ability to use the Force the third sight, and it was mostly possessed by young girls who lost this ability with age. When Vuron was 3 years old, the 5-year-old Vurika was taken from the family to become a Skywalker navigator. Since the Chiss did not have navigation computers capable of predicting the nature of the unknown regions, the only way to traverse the expanse of chaos was by using the Force. The young Chiss enrolled in the military academy on Renthor. His academic performance, abilities, and logical thinking were beyond reproach. The successes of young Vuron attracted General Bakif. Impressed by Vuron's potential, the general summoned the aristocrat Thurfian from the Myth family to the academy to propose that he adopt the young Chiss into their family. Once, thousands of years ago, families were exactly what they were traditionally believed to be, groups of blood relatives or through marriage. However, The shortcomings of such a system led to decline and disunity. Thus, family heads began to experiment with other methods of infusing fresh blood into their ranks. As a result, a system was established whereby talented individuals could become honorary kin. Undoubtedly, Thrawn possessed all the qualities to become an adopted son of the myth family. The adoption process could take several months, but by the decision of the family leadership, Thrawn immediately became a part of them and received the name Mith-Rau-Nuru. Thrawn was no more. In his place stood Thrawn. After joining his new family, Thrawn transferred to the academy on the planet Napura. This planet was the headquarters of the Defense Fleet, which was tasked with safeguarding the interests of the Ascendancy beyond its borders. As a student of the new academy, he considered art a superior method for obtaining tactical information and analyzing adversaries. At the academy, he met senior cadet Aralani. She supervised the Chiss during his combat simulation exercises. Thrawn's performance was so high that the academy leadership suspected him of cheating. Thanks to Aralani, Thrawn managed to prove his innocence and successfully passed the combat trial. To mark his exculpation, Thrawn invited Aralani to an art gallery, where he told her about the art of other species and how studying art could aid in combat. Thrawn graduated from the academy with the rank of lieutenant in the Defense Fleet. Rising through the career ranks, he achieved the rank of junior commander and became a respected member of the Ascendancy. The Myth family rejoiced in the fame that Thrawn brought them. However, the Chiss himself did not seek recognition from others. On the contrary, some of his methods raised questions. During his service, Thrawn exposed the Liowoan government, who, under the guise of piracy, attacked Ascendancy planets. Despite the Liowoan regime denying their involvement, the junior commander volunteered to deal with the problem. Adhering to the rules of non-preemptive strikes, Thrawn confirmed that the pirate ships were disguised Liowoan ships and destroyed them. For his vigilance and leadership qualities, General Bakif promoted Thrawn 2 ranks at once, to senior commander, while Thrawn's friend Aralani was promoted to the rank of senior captain. Over his time in the Chiss Ascendancy, Thrawn experienced many ups and downs. Ultimately, as a result of his exploits, the ruling Stibla family awarded Thrawn the honorific title of Odo, and now his full name was Mith-Rau-Nuru Odo. In time, the Chiss Ascendancy identified a threat in the upcoming conflict with the Nicardan. The Ascendancy sent Thrawn to seek allies in the fight against the impending enemy. Thrawn left the capital and ventured beyond the unknown regions. Shortly after reaching the outer rim over the planet Batu, the Chiss encountered a Jedi Eta II Actis-class interceptor. The interceptor was piloted by General Anakin Skywalker. When Skywalker introduced himself, Thrawn was surprised by the Jedi's name. After all, the navigators of Chiss ships were called Skywalkers. The Chiss needed to learn about the Clone Wars and the state of the Republic, and the Jedi general was searching for Senator Padme Amidala. During their personal meeting, Skywalker told Thrawn about the Clone Wars, and how the Confederacy of Independent Systems had declared war on the Republic. In gratitude, Thrawn offered his assistance in finding the senator. Working together, they found Padme and discovered a droid factory on the planet Mokivj. The factory was developing B-2 super battle droids in cortosis armor. Cortosis could channel blaster shots through itself and disrupt the functioning of lightsabers upon contact. Skywalker insisted that the factory must be destroyed, otherwise these droids would bring death to many clones and Jedi. Thrawn suggested sabotaging the droid production so that the Separatists would waste time and resources in vain. However, the Jedi still decided to proceed in his own way, destroy the factory and the cortosis mining shafts. The cortosis in the shafts reflected the shock wave from the explosion and triggered a planet-scale catastrophe. Lava gushed onto the agricultural lands, and ash and smoke hung in the air for a long time. Ultimately, the planet became barren and inhospitable. The lush meadows and dense forests turned into lifeless plains. The local inhabitants were outraged by the actions of the Jedi and his companions. so Padme considered Thrawn's plan to be more prudent. As a sign of respect, Skywalker invited the Chiss to Coruscant for a meeting with the Chancellor, but he declined the Jedi's offer. Thrawn was impressed by Anakin's bravery and cunning, while the Jedi was equally impressed by Thrawn and his uncanny ability to analyze situations. The general spoke highly of him during a meeting with the Chancellor. However, Thrawn was not satisfied with the state of the Republic and deemed it unfit as an ally. In his view, democracy is an ineffective way of governing a state. Everyone had a voice, but nothing was achieved through those voices. Clear and swift decisions by a single ruler or a small group of elites were needed, as was the case in the Chiss Ascendancy. During the war with the so-called Nicardan Destiny, while investigating an attack on a refugee ship, Thrawn headed to the Rapak system. There, Thrawn met Uingali Fur Maroksar of the Maroksar sub-clan. He warned the Chiss that his system was suffering from Nicardan attacks. Fearing the extinction of his kind, he handed Thrawn the family ring with the emblem of his clan. The ring bore the image of a creature called the Chimera. Shortly after the Chiss's victory over the Nicardan Destiny, Thrawn returned to Rapak and found that his old acquaintance had become the captain of a captured Nicardan ship with a large image of the Chimera on its hull. As an art lover, the Chiss was impressed. He wanted to return the family ring to its owner, but Uingali insisted that Thrawn keep it as a gift for their assistance in liberation. Soon, Thrawn adopted the Chimera's image as his personal symbol. Despite the victory over the Nicardan, the Chiss Ascendancy could not enjoy peaceful existence. A threat from the Grisk was looming. The Grisk, as Thrawn himself described, were semi-mythical beings encountered by few. They are terrifying warriors without a home of their own, wandering through space and subjugating their opponents with numerical superiority and ferocity. They could threaten not only the Chiss Ascendancy, but also other major civilizations. The unknown regions were very hostile territory, so the Chiss kept the idea of finding a powerful ally in the known space. This is how the Chiss referred to the regions of the galaxy known to us. The Ascendancy sent Thrawn to continue exploring the Outer Rim. During his expedition, Thrawn came across a colony of Nemoidian refugees. Upon learning about the Chiss Ascendancy, the Nemoidians pleaded with Thrawn to wage war against the newly formed empire. Thrawn rejected the proposal of an alliance but returned to the Ascendancy intrigued. The new empire dominating the galaxy attracted the Chiss's attention. This was no longer the old Republic which had previously not appealed to the Ascendancy. Therefore, Thrawn turned to the aristocrat for advice. The Chiss Ascendancy sought to determine whether the new empire was a suitable ally or a new threat. Thrawn was then given a new mission. He was to infiltrate the empire to study it. His objective was to either convince the empire to become their ally, or weaken it enough to make it an easy target for other warlike inhabitants of the unknown regions. Thrawn proposed to stage his exile from the Ascendancy and venture into lower space to attract the Empire's attention. He renounced his rank of senior captain of the defense fleet and went to an unknown planet. The hut built by Thrawn appeared as though he had lived there for many years. On various crates near the hut, he inscribed markings in the Sea Beastie language, spoken in the unknown regions and remote planets of the wild space. Eventually, he managed to draw the attention of the Imperials, and the Venator-class star destroyer Strikefast, commanded by Captain Vos Park, appeared in the planet's orbit. The Imperials had come to the planet in search of smugglers. Park, Colonel Barris, and Cadet Eli Vanto did not find any smugglers on the planet, but discovered an old hut in the middle of the forest. Following the protocol on encountering unknown races and sentient beings, the Imperials had to stay on the planet to study their find. Cadet Eli Vanto was called in as a specialist in Sea Beastie and the wild space. Vanto was from Lysatra, a backwater planet in the wild space. The Imperials considered him a simple country bumpkin, but his knowledge and experience proved useful. While studying the hut, Thrawn concealed himself in the forest and began to attack. He caused 2 V-wings to crash and looted the pilots' bodies. Using his superior intellect and tactics, he carried out diversions and distractions in cunning ways. Failing to capture the perpetrator, the Imperials decided to leave the planet and take the Hutt with them onto the ship for further study. Thrawn seized the moment and snuck aboard the Venator. On board the Strike Fast, Thrawn revealed his presence and voluntarily surrendered to the Imperials. Eli Vanto immediately recognized the Chiss. On his planet, there were many rumors and legends about the Chiss, famous for their martial achievements. He thought these stories were merely myths, but now he saw the blue-skinned, red-eyed stranger with his own eyes. The Republic had lost contact with this civilization for millennia, and now the Chiss suddenly re-emerged on the stage of history. Vanto guessed the stranger spoke Sea-Bisti and inadvertently became his translator. Learning more about the Chiss from the cadet, Commodore Park decided this discovery warranted an audience with Emperor Palpatine himself. Therefore, the Strike Fast set course for Coruscant. En route to the capital, Vanto was ordered to expand Thrawn's knowledge of basic. So, the cadet began to tell myths about his people. Thrawn found these legends amusing. He considered them interesting and informative, though sometimes false and exaggerated. Thrawn also found it important to get to know Vanto better, as he noticed an undiscovered talent and potential in him. The Imperials arrived at the Emperor's palace and delivered the mysterious prisoner directly to Palpatine. Confident in himself, Thrawn immediately declared to the Emperor that his knowledge of the unknown regions could be beneficial to the Empire. The Chiss Ascendancy had identified a threat in the form of the Grisk, which could also pose a danger to Palpatine's empire. Thrawn offered his exceptional talents in service to the Emperor in exchange for his assistance should that very threat arise. To finally convince Palpatine that he was trustworthy, he named Anakin Skywalker. Palpatine stated that General Skywalker had not survived the war, but he remembered his words about Thrawn. The Emperor accepted the Chiss's proposal, but besides his requests, he gave Thrawn the opportunity to become part of the Imperial fleet. Thus, Palpatine ordered Thrawn and his translator, Vanto, to be enrolled in the Imperial Academy on Coruscant. Vanto had been studying at the Myanmar Academy, with only 3 months left until graduation. Now, thanks to their remarkable find, he was enrolled in the Royal Imperial Academy. It would be wrong to say he was delighted about this, as his plans were linked to his home planet, far from the intrigues of the Central Empire. In truth, the Emperor did not believe that Thrawn needed a translator, but in private conversation, the Chiss insisted that Vanto remain close to him. He wanted to develop the young cadet's talents to secure a loyal and capable ally in the future. Commandant Dienlark reluctantly accepted the urgent order to enroll a non-human and a country bumpkin into his academy. He tasked Thrawn with studying all the material while Eli Vanto completed his training. This meant the Chiss had only 3 months to learn the material and pass the exams. Since Dienlark had been informed that Thrawn had combat experience, he handed him a lieutenant's plaque. He wished for the cadets to see him either as demoted or a favorite of the commandant. Both could make Thrawn the object of ridicule and harassment, so he decided to hide it, until it became useful. Thrawn's race and Vanto's social status created problems during their training. The fact was that the Empire primarily consisted of the predominant human race, and after the terrible Clone Wars, many humans came to despise non-humans. Whether they were separatists or Republicans was irrelevant. Palpatine's own policy excluded the presence of non-humans in high positions in his new empire. Stormtroopers, officers, and other ranks, with few exceptions, were humans. But all these difficulties did not prevent Thrawn and Vanto from successfully completing their training at the Royal Academy. In just 3 months, the Chiss managed to study the structure of the Empire and earn the rank of lieutenant. He was appointed second officer of a Gozanti-class cruiser, the Blood Crow, and Vanto became his aide. On the Blood Crow, Thrawn served under the command of Captain Rick Virgilio, hunting down smugglers and aiding distressed Imperial ships. Captain Virgilio was not concerned with Thrawn being an outsider and treated him with respect. Under his command, Thrawn quickly rose to the rank of First Artillery Officer. The past Clone Wars, which had turned the galaxy on its head, fascinated the Chiss greatly. He took to studying that era and its technologies, collecting various antiques preserved from the war. Captain Vigilio provided Thrawn with an unused compartment on the ship to store his collection. Among his collection were a part of a hyperdrive ring, and personally assembled from parts, a droideca and Mark I buzz droids, which were a large rarity. In time, Vigilio was replaced by Captain Philia Rossi. She discovered Thrawn's storage and ordered the Chiss to get rid of the junk. Unlike Vigilio, Rossi was biased against the blue-skinned officer. Nevertheless, Thrawn managed to persuade Rossi to keep the collection because it could be profitably sold. The Mark I buzz droids were costly technology, since some parts of the droid were made of dunium metal. After the war, the Empire began actively increasing its supplies of this material, and the demand for it soared. Therefore, the price for such a droid could be very high. She gave him time to complete assembling the droids and find a buyer. The Blood Crow received a distress signal from the freighter Dromedar. Captain Rossi decided to assign the dusty work to the lovers of old clunks. Thrawn and his small team went aboard the ship, carrying Tabana gas. On the Dromedar, the Imperials encountered Neville Signy, who introduced himself as a surviving crew member. The lock of the compartment with the valuable cargo was blocked, so Thrawn decided to use one of his Mark I buzz droids. However, turning towards Signy, Thrawn noticed he was looking down the barrels of a blaster. At the same moment, a group of pirates who had captured the Dromedar burst into the hold of the ship. Signy proposed Thrawn surrender and hand over his buzz droid, since he well knew the value of dunium. Thrawn set his plan into action to save the team and capture the group of pirates. The hostages and valuable droids were taken to the pirate ship. The entire crew of the Dromedar was locked in a spacious cell. The Imperials were placed there as well. Waiting for the Dromedar to depart, piloted by Signy, Thrawn took out his lieutenant's insignia, issued to him back at the Academy. The genius Chiss had built in a control system for the buzz droids long before this operation. After their activation, one of them freed the hostages by cutting through the grid. To avoid confrontation with the enemy forces in the bow, Thrawn ordered the second buzz droid to cut the ship in half, thus separating the pirates from the hostages. In this way, the Chiss freed both the crew of the Dromedar and his own team, sacrificing the Tabana gas. They also managed to capture 3 pirates. Returning aboard the Blood Crow, Thrawn and Vanto reported the incident. Rossi was displeased that the lieutenant had sacrificed valuable gas to save the crew, stating that their lives were not worth even 1 container. She temporarily suspended the Chiss and his aide from duty, sending them to the planet Ancien. There, Thrawn decided to interrogate the captured pirates. He offered them information about Signy's whereabouts in exchange for the opportunity to leave prison and avoid meeting with Grand Moff Tarkin. Not buying into this proposal, the pirates conversed among themselves in Seabesti, hoping that Imperial officers did not speak the Outland traders' language. During the conversation, they inadvertently mentioned the inhabitants of the planet UBA. Thus, Thrawn determined the location of the stolen Tabana. Thanks to the lieutenant's actions, the gas containers were returned, but Signy managed to empty 12 out of 20 containers and escape. Chiss struggled to accept this partial defeat. Despite the operation's success, Chiss was required to face a military tribunal. Thrawn and Vanto had to stay on Coruscant for a while. There, the Chiss met ISB Colonel Wolf Yularen. The colonel informed the lieutenant that he supported his actions on Dromedar and promised his assistance. At one of the social parties, Yularen sought to introduce the Chiss to influential senators who could affect the investigation regarding Thrawn. There, the Chiss met Arinda Price, an aide to the senator of the planet Lothal. The Price family owned a mining shaft on Lothal, but after dunium was discovered in it, Governor Azadi immediately took the business under his control. Price's parents had to leave the planet, and Arinda herself wished to go to Coruscant, to immerse herself in the poisonous elite society and to learn the intricacies of political life. Meeting the Chiss, Arinda immediately realized she had made a valuable acquaintance. Yularen's efforts paid off, and all charges against Thrawn were dropped. Moreover, for his merits during the operation, Thrawn was promoted to captain, while Eli Vanto remained a simple aide. The captain was assigned to the light cruiser Aquitans-class light cruiser, the Thunder Wasp. After the incident with Signy, Thrawn was haunted by the thought that the pirate was well aware of the increasing value of Dunium. Just like the pirate, he suspected that the Empire was hiding a mysterious large project behind a veil, which consumed a vast amount of resources. For about a year, Thrawn served aboard the Thunder Wasp. During missions, the Chiss noticed traces of Signy's activity and tried to track him down. In breaks between missions, Thrawn visited Coruscant and helped Palpatine supplement the map of the unknown regions. There, the Chiss met Arihinda Pryce again, who turned to him for help in exposing Moff Gadi. Thrawn advised Pryce to use Gadi's hatred for Tarkin and to approach the Grand Moff personally. Tarkin personally attended the ceremony and congratulated the Chiss on his new rank. Eli Vanto was also promoted directly to the rank of Captain Lieutenant. Thrawn was given command of an Imperial Star Destroyer, which he named the Chimera. Thrawn did not forget the cruiser with the depiction of a giant creature with spider limbs and snake heads on the planet Rapak. The Chiss ensured that the underside of his Imperial destroyer was also adorned with the Chimera, which distinguished the talented Commodore's cruiser among the numerous ships of the Empire. During his service to the Empire, Thrawn began encountering the activities of rebels in different parts of the galaxy. Thrawn actively studied the art, mentality, and culture of many planets. He collected various artifacts, jewels, and works of art, which were stored on board the Chimera. What was a trinket to an ordinary Imperial officer was an object for the brilliant Thrawn, revealing many secrets. This was what set him apart from other Imperials. Thrawn always respected his enemy, and instead of blindly wanting to destroy them, he immersed himself in their philosophy and culture, drawing out their weaknesses and strengths. This method vividly demonstrated its effectiveness. However, only an outsider from the unknown regions was capable of such strategic analysis, but by focusing solely on the art of war, he hadn't had time to study the subtleties of political intrigue, and in this he lagged behind many of his colleagues. Rebel cells were far more organized than groups of smugglers. Suppressing one uprising after another, Thrawn's chest was soon adorned with the insignia of an Imperial fleet admiral. Despite all the admiral's successes, Neville Signy, whom many called the Night Swan, remained elusive to the Empire. The Chiss was amazed at how cunning Signy could be. The Night Swan's primary goal was to thwart the theft of precious Dunium. He did this not to earn a lot of credits, but to hinder the Emperor's grand plans. The Night Swan viewed the Empire as a vile, corrupt tyranny that needed to be replaced by a new order based on freedom and justice. Despite his hatred for the Empire, he admired Thrawn's intellect and considered him a worthy opponent, the most competent of the Imperial officers. His views aligned with many rebel groups, which allowed him to lead numerous rebellious operations, with each one becoming more significant than the last. At that time, Admiral Thrawn and Commodore Vanto led the 96th Task Force. They were invited to a security meeting by High Command. In the conference room, Thrawn was greeted by Wolf Yularen, Admiral Durrell, and other high-ranking officials. Among them was also Governor of Lothal, Arihinda Pryce. On the planets Lothal, Baton, Samoon, and Danash, there had been an increase in rebellious and other criminal sentiments. The members of the meeting noted that factions were consolidating their efforts, or at least exchanging information, coordinating their plans. On the planet Baton, the rebels had taken control of the Imperial garrison on Scrim Island with several ion cannons. They had seized over 100 hostages, among whom were civilians. It was proposed that Admiral Thrawn should resolve this problem. Yet Thrawn preferred to first understand the situation in detail and spend some time on preparation. Disapproving of the rapid career rise of the outsider, Admiral Durrell deemed Thrawn incompetent to carry out this task and demanded to launch the operation on Baton immediately. Consequently, the members of the council handed baton over to Admiral Durrell. Thrawn and his 96th group were dispatched to Samoon. After the meeting, Thrawn remarked to Vanto that Admiral Durrell's overconfidence would come back to haunt him. Instead of heading to Samoon, Thrawn entrusted this mission to his commander Pharaoh, who went to deal with a small group of rebels without the Admiral's support. Meanwhile, Thrawn and Vanto boarded a confiscated smuggler ship and set off for reconnaissance on the planet Bataan. In orbit of the planet was Durrell's Star Destroyer, along with several light cruisers. Durrell ordered the turbo-lasers to fire at the center of the shield surrounding Scrim Island. However, the rebels opened the western section and made several ion shots at the destroyer. Before Durrell could react, he failed to notice that the shield on the western side had already closed, and the next strike came from the northern section, followed by the eastern side. Instead of adapting to the enemy's tactics, Durrell stubbornly continued his futile assault. The next shot came from a turbo-laser installation, which had not been known to the reconnaissance. Durrell's destroyer was in danger, and Thrawn sent a distress signal. Meanwhile, a rebel freighter left the planet's orbit but did not hasten to jump to hyperspace. Thrawn and Vanto decided to have a friendly conversation with him under the guise of smugglers. Eli dressed in an Imperial officer's uniform, obviously not his size, with a hole from a blaster shot. This way, the Chiss wanted to disguise Vanto as a smuggler who had taken the uniform from a fallen officer. He also gave him a blaster and put a lieutenant's rank plaque on him, the same one that Thrawn received back at the Academy and had proved useful on Dromedar. But this time, the plate held different surprises. On board the freighter, Eli could not maintain the ruse for long. The rebels took his blaster and brought him to their boss, who turned out to be Signy. The Night Swan immediately recognized Vanto. During their conversation, the rebel placed the confiscated commander's blaster on the Night Swan's table. Suddenly, Eli and Signy heard alarm signals. Of the freighter could be the Night Swan, but deliberately did not warn Eli so that his surprise would be genuine. This way, the Night Swan thought he had caught them unawares. Durrell's ship was forced to retreat. The Admiral promised to return and continue the attack with renewed strength, but High Command relieved the hapless Admiral from the mission. Meanwhile, the Chiss reported that the mutiny on Samoon was quelled, and the intelligence from Bataan had been fully gathered. Observing Durrell's attack, Admiral Thrawn collected all the necessary information and was ready to direct the Chimera to Bataan. High Command, despite Durrell's objections, dispatched Admiral Thrawn to crush the rebels. Admiral Thrawn's attack began. The Chiss ordered the light cruisers to bombard the island's shield while sending them to the forefront. The cruisers gradually descended towards the island, creating cover for the Chimera. Thrawn was not surprised that the light cruisers were partially immobilized. According to his strategy, they were meant to shield the Chimera and absorb ion blasts. As soon as the Chimera took up an optimal firing position, the turbo lasers were aimed not at the island, but at the ocean. As learned from Durrell's unfortunate experience, the island's shield withstood a direct orbital attack, but the water was unprotected. The Chimera's turbo lasers targeted two areas, thereby bringing a powerful tsunami crashing down on the island, which knocked out the turbo laser installation and ion cannons. By unleashing one tsunami after another, Thrawn continued his assault until the rebels surrendered and deactivated the shield dome. The Scrim Island was successfully captured, but the planet remained under the control of the Night Swan. 2 days later, Arihinda Price and Colonel Yularen arrived aboard the Chimera. Thrawn and Vanto reported that they had discovered the main rebel base at the mining complex. The operation required a ground attack since, besides the rebels, the complex housed about 30,000 civilians. Price offered her assistance to the Admiral, as her parents resided in complex. Wishing to save them before the attack, she proposed conducting reconnaissance and possibly finding a way to disable the shield generator. Disguised, the governor, together with Agent Yularen, departed for the mining complex. Meanwhile, Thrawn extracted a secret frequency from the stolen ship to contact the Night Swan and propose a face-to-face meeting. Meeting near the complex, Thrawn offered Night Swan the opportunity to leave the planet before his attack on the complex. He admired the abilities and talents of the Night Swan. Thus, he offered him a place within the Chiss ascendancy for his rebellious activities. However, Signy was deeply convinced that he was needed by the rebellion and rejected the offer. His decision was adamant, as duty was above all else. He also knew that Thrawn would never launch a full-scale attack, thus sparing thousands of lives. They both agreed on the principle of avoiding unnecessary casualties. Night Swan left the meeting place and headed back to the mining complex. Before his attack, the ingenious Chiss positioned light cruisers and their repair barges away from the Chimera, thereby causing doubts in Thrawn's strategy among Yularen and Vanto. The light cruisers and the Chimera itself became easy targets for an attack from space. On the planet Danash, dozens of escaping rebel ships had been spotted, which sooner or later could come out of hyperspace and attack the 96th Division. However, Thrawn calmly and confidently awaited news from Price. About 30 rebel ships jumped out of hyperspace. The light cruisers, along with the repair barges, were immobile and appeared defenseless. The rebel ships were commanded by Night Swan. Thrawn knew he would never give the order to fire at defenseless targets. The rebels left the light cruisers behind and advanced towards the Chimera. In the moment when the squadrons were positioned between the Chimera and the stationary cruisers, TIE starfighter emerged from the repair barges. Thrawn encircled the rebels in a pincer movement. The crew of the Chimera was surprised by the appearance of 3 TIE squadrons, as the Chimera's fighters were patrolling the surface of Bataan. The Chiss had borrowed the TIs from Admiral Durrell and hidden them in the repair barges. Thrawn exploited the leniency of Night Swan as his weakness. The rebel ships started to fall, one by one, and when the remains of the rebel ships approached the Chimera's kill zone, green turbo-laser beams began to slice through space. The rebels were defeated. Arinda met her parents and immediately took them with her. Her assistant, an Imperial Security Bureau operative, discovered the shield generator and planted thermal charges. But suddenly, the situation escalated, and Price had to dispose of her partner in her parents' home. She placed a thermal charge on another target, where the body of her ISB assistant lay. She led her parents to a safe place, and at the moment when a patrol of Yularen's stormtroopers discovered the dead Imperial agent, she used the detonator. The charges left by Agent of Security Bureau exploded. However, since the complex was still covered by the shield, a powerful wave reflected inward, obliterating not only the rebel stronghold but also the homes of peaceful inhabitants in the surrounding area. The explosion was far more destructive than Arinda anticipated. Nevertheless, the objective was achieved. The parents' home was surely destroyed by the shockwave and fires, along with any evidence of the murder. After the incident, Yularen reported that the losses among civilians exceeded those of the rebels, but the objective was accomplished. The rebellion was quashed. Among the victims, the Night Swan was identified, who died for the sake of the rebellion. Despite the victory, Thrawn was outraged and troubled by the deaths of civilians, but tried to hide his emotions. However, according to the report from Coruscant, the Emperor was very pleased with this operation and summoned the Chiss to the Imperial Palace. After the meeting, Thrawn voiced his suspicions about Arinda Price, but the governor confidently stated that she would be useful to the Admiral. The Chiss had reached his high rank due to military successes, while Price had risen through political maneuvers. She proposed a deal to Thrawn. In exchange for his assistance on the political arena, he was to help her deal with the rebels on Lothal, who were gaining more and more strength. Thrawn could add another victory over the rebels to his record, and potentially take the place of the Admiral of the 7th Fleet, which was only deployed in major battles with fierce opponents. Thrawn was intrigued by this offer, and promised to consider it. Standing in Palpatine's throne room, the Chiss was dressed in a new uniform, different from the usual. His attire was dazzlingly white, with gold epaulets and silver insignia on the collar. The officer's plaque was no less imposing, 12 stripes of blue, red, and gold colors. "It's an excellent day for you, Grand Admiral Thrawn. It's an excellent day for my empire." "Although many may not see it that way," said Palpatine. "I will try to dispel their doubts," Thrawn replied. Despite his triumph, the Chiss was concerned. He wished to share his doubts with the Emperor. Thrawn sought to learn about the Death Star. The Emperor was surprised that Thrawn knew about the secret project. He had learned the name from unencrypted messages and calculated the project's scale by the amount of resources consumed. But Palpatine immediately guessed his concerns. The Death Star, a project that could become a threat not only to rebellious systems, but also to the Chiss ascendancy. The Emperor hurried to reassure Thrawn. The Sith had no designs against the ascendancy. Thrawn expressed his doubts about the project's effectiveness, considering that such a colossal weapon could not cover several systems at once. But the purpose of the Death Star lay in maintaining order through fear. The mere existence of such a weapon was meant to pacify all systems of the Empire. After handing Thrawn the Grand Admiral's plaque, a tall figure in black armor appeared in the throne room. Palpatine hurried to introduce Grand Admiral Thrawn to his apprentice, Darth Vader. "Greetings, Lord Vader. I've heard much about you. Glad we finally met," said Thrawn. "Yes, it is mutual," replied Vader.